Welcome to Fearless Do More. Coming up on today's episode, we're joined by Toby Bridges, CEO of NBT Group.
Started what became a burgeoning business through First World War. Although my great-grandfather, because they were Dutch, they had a German-sounding surname. They used to get the doors burnt and everything as the First World War was building, and they used to get their windows smashed and everything because they thought they were Germans. And then, as the First World War hit, he got sent away to war. As the Trams disappeared, that business disappeared really, and so my great-grandmother and grandmother and her two sisters, my two great aunts, created a whole new business, and they went into the mines in Northumberland and became the largest supplier of Ericsson telephones in the UK at that time.
What's the scale of the problem around waste?
The easiest story to relate it to now is that the situation during the pandemic where NHS spends 1.4 billion on PPE, which ultimately it probably didn't need because it just didn't know what it had. It's not really anybody's fault. It's because systems are legacy systems now. People are doing the best they can. The future for me is that people need to do this. They need to be able to communicate well and talk well, and we need to be more adaptive. The changes are going to come faster. That's what's happening, and it's hard to get your head around. And ultimately, if you want to get to a 4-day week, a 3-day week, using more technology to give you the day off so you get more, so you can maintain productivity.
So if you were envisaging 50 years in the future, what does the factory or manufacturing plant look like?
Yeah, and that's the scary bit, isn't it? That is the scary bit.
Welcome, Toby. It's great to have you here today on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Fearless Do More. You're the chief exec of a business that's been going for 170 years. Tell us a little bit about NBT before we get started.
Can do. Well, so not quite 117 years we are.
117?
Yeah, so we started 1908. My great-grandfather, great-grandmother were economic migrants, you call them these days, came from Holland, set up a business. Don't know why they came, but they came to set up a business at the bottom of Dean Street there in Newcastle to supply spare parts for the trams that were running coal down to the quayside. Yeah, started what became a burgeoning business through First World War. Although my great-grandfather, because they were Dutch, they had a German-sounding surname. They used to get the doors burnt and everything as the First World War was building, and they used to get their windows smashed and everything because they thought they were Germans. And then, as the First World War hit, he got sent away to war. And he was away for the whole time. And we've got a record of actually everywhere he fought. It was literally every major battle across the whole of the First World War, he was away. So I guess my great-grandmother was running the business through that period. So yeah, and that's how they started. So we started off in what today I determine or call supply chain management, but essentially it's that old-fashioned, what we would have called once upon a time an industrial distributor of management of parts, but bringing parts in and selling parts on, and that's what he did and what they did. And he did that right through until the Second World War again, he was sent away, German sounding name, got sent away again. And great-grandmother must have been running the business. And eventually, when he came back, he died about 1951, and it was the same time the trams stopped running coal down to the quayside. And so my grandmother did take it over the business officially then. And as the trams disappeared, that business disappeared really. And so my great-grandmother and grandmother and her two sisters, my two great aunts, created a whole new business, and they went into the mines in Northumberland and became the largest supplier of Ericsson telephones in the UK at that time. So 4 women running a business in the 1950s.
Pretty mold-breaking, that.
Yeah, in the mines was it's something to be incredibly proud of, I think, really, and actually just shows what family business is about. That you've just got to make it work. You've got to be there and be present in it. So yeah, and then great female leaders today, I think, should be looking back and inspiring to those stories because everything's possible. So yeah, so they did that right through until probably about the late 60s, early 70s, and then obviously all the mining issues and such when the mines all started to change their format. My dad was coming into the business. That business was starting to drift a little bit because of those challenges, and at the same time as that happened, the 3M company, the Post-it note people came to us and said to my dad, we've got this new invention called brown sticky tape. Do you fancy having a go selling
Never
it?
catch on.
Yeah, never catch. Yeah, well, so yeah, and he went, yeah, I'll look at that for you. I don't even know why they came. I think my dad was saying we had some sort of relationship with them in the past, and anyway, so they came, and so he took it to Procter & Gamble when they were up at Seton Delaval there, and they were using string to type their perfumes and everything, and they thought this product was brilliant, and that became his first client, and that's when North British Tapes was born. So, and that's now NBT, and so again, it's always just been about moving parts. Those 3 iterations were that. My business iteration has been about multi-product supply, and then about how do we manage supply chains better for our clients. And so really our purpose today as NBT Group is driving out obsolescence and waste in the supply chain. How do we manage all that better? And then it's become about how do you use technology to help you automate all that process? And we've got a range of software and some hardware that we use to maintain that process. So it's about people not having to do it. So we've got technologies where we create people as storerooms. When you walk in, pick up a product, walk out again. Then the software collecting that data, then it's automating the purchase, way that's all purchased, way products are purchased using algorithms. And so that's our direction of travel. And as we move forward, the iteration that's coming now, really almost in the 5th iteration of the business, will be more about how do we utilize software and AI particularly to start to standardize and clean data so that people can see what they've got, that it becomes accessible, and then they can determine how they want to use that data more efficiently they can now, where it's probably all still in Excel spreadsheets and such. So it's, to me, our business, whilst we're still moving, so NBT is still moving parts around, and we have a secondary business now, which we spun out a while ago, which is a tech business called Vitech Solutions, and its role is essentially to enable people to be more efficient in the way they work. So less people doing the manual, allowing people to go and do the most important stuff, which is value adding, which is working on production lines or having great conversations with people about how we change the world, I guess. So in a very short snapshot, because 117 years is a lot more stuff, do you know what I mean? But
so how, when you think about a procurement process, how I just think of people buying things that they need and then they use them and then they buy some more. How much? What's the scale of the problem around waste?
It's huge. I mean, it might be a bit unfair, but the easiest story to relate it to now is that the situation during the pandemic where NHS spends 1.4 billion on PPE, which ultimately it probably didn't need because it just didn't know what it had. It's not really anybody's fault. It's because systems are legacy systems now. People are doing the best they can, but trying to work out on a number of different data points what they should have, and not really knowing what people are using day to day because there's none of it's really managed. What we try to do is provide various technologies that allow them to manage it at the sharp end or in their storeroom or whatever, and then the ability to then take that great data of use and then bring other data sets to it, whether that's production data or whatever, to enable them to buy better so that they've got the right product at the right time. Because it's a bit like how many times in our own personal world, it's a bit like going to the supermarket, coming back and then going to your fridge, put the stuff in the fridge and then realizing you didn't buy any milk. What we do is try and stop that. So that waste of time, I'm going to have to go back to the supermarket and get the milk or whatever, or I'm going to have to go and get it and spend more on it because I need it now and it's urgent now. It's that trying to get rid of all that and allowing technology to really manage all of that process for you, so you don't have to worry about it. So essentially, if you look at it from your point of view at home, the technology that we have is your fridge. When you open the door, you open the door to use it, it knows you've used it, it's then reordering it. And
so
it's
is
all
future
well,
field?
arguably Amazon have started to play in that area. So yeah, you could see that going that way. Whether we would do that, it's not our world is B2B. That's where we want to play. My interest is or NBT's interest, core interest is manufacturing and how do we help enable them to be efficient. And then to me, the other core area is our public services, NHS, as Class have mentioned it. And again, the point is that it's just the change in the world. Nobody's doing anything wrong. It's just we could be more efficient. And so how do we enable people to look at it in a different way? And I've got some great people that I work with who can help people with that. But in essence, yeah, of course it is. I mean, if you didn't have to, if you knew your fridge or your store cupboard was stocked with the right amount of stuff, then you could do lots of other things, couldn't you? You could do more value-adding stuff. You can go and talk to more friends. You can go and do whatever. You can have more hobby time. But that's the iteration of the world. But and then it's that whole piece around. And then how do you use artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, and all these to act on all that? But and again, where we are right now is you've got to create great data to allow artificial intelligence to work effectively. And our real piece at the moment we're working hard on is to try and get to that example where you open the fridge door and it gets replenished automatically as you use it. We're doing that now in our B2B world. That's the fifth iteration of this business, I guess, our bar business. To do that, you've got to understand what it is you've got, and that's the hardest bit for anybody. And that was the problem that the NHS had, in my opinion, I have to say. But that's the problem they had. They just don't know what we've got. So how do we do that? How do we create great data? Because then we're going to allow technology to come to play, and that will make a difference. And if that's if you look at some of this, that obsolescence piece, the waste and all that is the drag on the economy probably. It's why there's a lack of productivity as well, because we're all doing stuff we shouldn't do, but we've got to get to that.
So the AI is the buzzword in everything at the moment. How easy is it as a business owner to get through the hype and find the solutions that actually are going to make the difference?
I love the hype. I'm totally suckered in by it. I spend probably most of my life now chatting away to ChatGPT about all sorts of things. Because, people talk about, there's the whole risk and you can see it, what happens if it's bad, what happens if it's, intrinsically bad, but actually what happens if it's intrinsically good and is amazing and it's in its early phases, really, certainly in terms of release to the world. And there is hype there, of course, and there is risk in it, but the genie's out the bottle, and we're all going to be impacted by it. But it's not going to change the world in the next however long, because, like I say, for it to work well, it's got to have great data to act on, and what we do it hasn't got great data. It's you've got to sort all that out. That's what I'm saying. So one of the things we're doing at the moment is I think it's amazingly clever, and is that we've developed a new bit of software, which essentially is a product, what we call a product information management piece of software. And as you pull product data, so that could be your milk in the fridge or whatever, you pull that in, it starts to wash that data and then it starts to standardize it, so that whatever's in here I recognize as the user, but you might recognize it as well as somebody else who just uses a similar product. Because in my world, I call that a cup and you call it a mug. We recognize what it is because we can see it, but a system doesn't. So our bit of AI, our large language model, as my techies call it, I'm very impressed that I say that to me, because I'm not a techie by any stretch, is recognizing it now. And the AI is acting to that. So it's clearing the data in the first place. Once you've done that, then you can start to connect it to the rest of the world.
And then I presume you can do sort of forecasting and say, well, you usually use the thing that you call a cup. You use 20 of them a day. Yeah. So you're going to run out in 2 years' time. So you're going to need to get an order in then.
Exactly. And if you use it from your own personal, because it's the same. It's the same position everywhere. But if you take it at home, I've got 4 cups at home, and I need to order 4 more. And you're either going to go in and what we would have Googled it once and looked for it and gone, I think that's it. What you really want is the AI just to do that for you. And if you've got a party and all of your friends are coming around, you've got 20 people coming around, you need 60 new, it'll do it for you. But it has to recognize what it is you want. It has to recognize that data.
That's the data to work from.
Yeah, so if you look at it then in our world, in automotive world or pharmaceutical world or wherever, it's the same thing. It's just people understanding what it is. But everything you said is exactly that, is that you see something coming. So what you're saying is you're taking signals from the landscape to say, we're suspecting a shortage might happen for whatever reason. And that's exactly what happened when war broke out. Or one of the challenges that we had is that when that boat got stuck in the Suez Canal, we had stuff on that boat. And then we had stuff on the boat behind. But I didn't know that until later on. And if we could see all of that and everyone's connected, and actually we know we're not going to get that, where can I get it from easily? That's usually right now today, good people going, right, we need to go there. We need to do something about that. But people are always going to act slightly more slowly than any system ever will do, you know, and part of us is about how do we build that network of understanding in our data world to go, I recognize that, you know, so your friends all suddenly turn up and you need 16 extra mugs. You need to know they've got them in that shop. You don't want to go to that shop and then that shop and that shop to get them. You just need to have them either brought to you or know where to go exactly. That's what we do. So all of our technology allows people potentially to see where everything is. That's our change in the world. And to do that, when that then allows the people to do is that. So I'm going to keep going back to this cup one, but if you need 16 extra cups and you're going to go, right, I've got to go down to wherever, Argos and get them, but actually your neighbour has 16 spare ones and you could see that, you would just go next door and ask for them, wouldn't you? Do you know what I mean? And they went, well, I don't need them. There you go. That's to me, that's obsolescence. Mm-hmm. So therefore, actually what you're starting to do, and again, that's something that we're looking at in my world, where I want to try and get this to, it's my change in the world, I guess, is that traditionally people go, I run out of a part for whatever reason, so therefore I bring it in from my supplier in a traditional vertical supply chain. If I could bring it from next door, that's what I would call a horizontal supply chain, which is impossible because you don't know they've got it. But actually, they've got obsolescence. You could take their obsolescence. Therefore, actually, we're now starting to not need as much stuff in the world. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Really proper circular economy
around
it.
Yeah. But to do that, you've got to have standardized data, good data, and people starting to share, and then probably technology managing it. And that's not just my technology. There's other technologies out there. It's not about that. It's about just data, great data connected together that AI can act on it. So to go back to your original question, there's loads of hype about it. It's coming. It is to me, feels really exciting. I think AI will be a force for good, not a force for bad. Categorically believe that. But we've got to get to a world which it can act on usefully.
Yeah. I think when people think about AI, they tend to think of sort of, robots coming and doing cleaning your house for you and things, that sort of thing.
Oh, that's totally coming as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So if you were envisaging 50 years in the future, what does the factory or manufacturing plant look like in the future?
Yeah, and that's the scary bit, isn't it? That is the scary bit. When I started NBT, so I'm 30 odd years now, and I know I don't look it, but I'm 30 odd years. We had a typing pool, you know what I mean? And some of the younger people in this room right now won't recognize what a typing pool was. We had a typing pool, and I turned back up from university with a PC and a copy of WordPerfect, which I'd been doing my dissertation on and all that, because we didn't have computers when we went to university. It was only like an iteration through the time I was there. And I came back and I was a jobbing sales rep for my dad, and used to go out, take an order, come back, and then somebody type it up and send it to the customer through the post. And I turn up with a PC and I'm just doing it myself now. I don't need the typing pool. And then the typing pool essentially disappeared. And those people all became customer service people. And they became more sales oriented and more actually having to chat to the client. So they had to change the way they work, but they all did. And that to me was digital adoption, which is a real, people talk about the challenge in digital adoption, but that was digital adoption at the time. That was us changing process in a very simple way, and changing the whole way that we worked as an organization, and then people having to adapt to it. And we did. And so to me, but now today, there's no typing pools. So how is the current situation happening in the factory? There is going to be a lot more robots, no two ways about it. And you can see some of the way some of the great manufacturing plants here in the Northeast are working now. You can see that coming. And we can all be rightly scared about it, as much as the typing pool must have gone, hang on a second, that's my job. But you evolve and move on. It doesn't mean there's still jobs, they're just different. The future for me is that people need to do this. They need to be able to communicate well and talk well, and we need to be more adaptive. The changes are going to come faster. That's what's happening. It's going to come, and it's hard to get your head around. And ultimately, if you want to get to a 4-day week, a 3-day week, using more technology to give you the day off, so you get more, so you can maintain productivity. But it is ultimately very scary. I just think about change and people being ready for change, and then we're having a whole educational system built around change and allowing, and we don't.
And I know you're passionate like me about the region, and it seems to me like there's an opportunity for us in this region to to just get hold of it and to say, well, we're going to be the digital exemplars for the rest of the country.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a realistic aspiration?
Well, yeah, you've got to say yes, haven't you? We've got to look. Yeah, I mean, for me to move, because the speed of change is so good. I mean, look how fast ChatGPT has evolved, even in the last year. You know, some of these things, videos now you can see of robots working, human-looking robots picking and packing and doing all sorts of things. All of that is coming. We can't stop that. It is coming. You know, and as a region, we're a nice discrete region, and therefore, actually, if we're all actually having open conversations about what do we want out of this, how do we create real value, how do we collaborate more, and we are a region of a size where we could do that. You know, and if I'm honest, I think we do it to a degree. I think we could go to the next level. The fact that we've got a devolved, I struggle with the region because Teesside and the northeast, I've always just seen as one. My business is always based in that whole region. I don't see a divide. But if you look at that whole region, so if I talk about, too devolved, but now we have a devolved essence, a good, strong mayor under Kim, and she's done a great starting job. I think she's got off to a good start, bringing that together and getting people into rooms and getting collaboration, thinking about what the future needs to look like alongside higher education and school level education. All of that we could do more of because we are a discrete, relatively small region. So yeah, I think we do have the opportunity, and we're not doing it at the minute. We need to be better at it.
I think we've done bits of it in the past because we've had to, because there's been sort of serial neglect of the region from all parties of all colours over many, many years. But now, as you say, with devolution, we've got more of a opportunity to say, well, let's not just do this in a reactive way because we've had to do it, but let's be proactive. But what would need to change for that to happen, where we became masters of our own destiny and started to drive things forward?
We need to continue on the path we're on. You and I know each other well enough. We've had so many conversations. You know, my answer to that is that we need to just be the Northeast. I'm not a macroeconomist in any sense, but I do believe that if Britain is my business and the Northeast is a product group within this business, which is 3% of my turnover, why would I invest in that when 70% is coming from the product group, which is the Southeast, let's say? The GDP part of it, this turnover is coming out of it, if you look at it that way. But we are 100% of our GDP. And I think that move on, devolution plus or turbocharged devolution, allowing us more freedom to make our own choices, almost working perhaps like an American state within the federal United States. Not right, maybe not a great example at the moment, but allowing us ourselves more control of how we invest, where we should invest, and then getting more people in where we can make a real difference, where we're not always going back to London and saying, are we okay to do these things? Just giving us more freedom to do that. But at the end of the day, we've got that first step, and then we need good leadership. I think we're starting to prove that, leading it. And then actually, with whatever we have, 3-4 million people in this part of the world, which in any other part of the world could be a country in its own right. It's not a small population. Potentially democracy works better because it's smaller, and then we act on that. But like I say, because it's smaller and it's more discreet and lots of people know each other, let's face it, there's not many people you can't get to once, and that's a great thing. But I think generally just being more collaborative and generally sitting down and working through the problems of the future, and because at the end of the day, we all want something out of this, and thinking more socially minded, that we're doing these things for the betterment of our region, therefore the betterment of the UK, therefore the betterment of the world as a whole. I think we just need to go to the next step. We need the freedom to be allowed to do the things we could do on our own, and I think that's what we have to go. We have to go next. I mean,
Do you think the people in the region will be able to drop some of the fear that they have to be able to do that? Do you think they'll ever get there?
When you say fear, what do you think people are?
Well, it's change, isn't it? It's something different. It's saying, having the confidence in our own abilities and saying we can do this as a region, and we don't need, I'm not saying any support, but we don't need the support that we've had to date. We can do this. Give us the money and we'll make our own destiny. But I think that is quite a scary thing for a lot of people. You love change, you like doing things, and you like looking forward, and you want to, as you said, you want to change the world. A lot of people are quite happy just to let things be as they are.
It's always about being inspired, isn't it? You've got to believe the leadership has to want to do that. The north of Tyne, I think the 3 councils north of the Tyne made a really brave step, and it's allowed the south of the Tyne public authorities to see that, and they've stepped together, and we've taken those steps together, and that's all. It's always about little steps. You know, as much as I like to take massive long steps, actually little steps is a great place of getting to from a revolution to a. Do you know what I mean? Having a new idea.
Taking people with you, isn't it?
Yeah, it is absolutely, and I think with that, and my concern more is actually the powers that be in London might be more scared of letting go. You know.
Yeah.
That's
in
probably
one place. Is everybody going to then follow suit? And then you've got.
But ultimately, if UK PLC does better because of it, because actually what we really want to do is move our GDP from 3% or whatever it is, up to 6%, or for it to still be 3%, but all to move on. And how do we do that better? Really, what is the mechanism for doing that? But I suspect there's probably people in this region who, I think right now, compared to what it was like 10 years ago, there's people moving in the right direction. The fact that we do have 2 devolved mayors, I think that's interesting. And they need the power, probably ultimately in my head, to come together and be one. And there'll be loads of people go, that's never going to happen, they shouldn't do that. But whatever, we should be one region. After that, there's just fields around us. So actually, how do we look at what we're great at? And then, so I think there's less fear, I think there'll be less fear. And actually, maybe just need to get on and do it and try it and push it. But I think we are. But for me, I'd rather have done it last week than be waiting next week. And but that's categorically still. I'm still at heart very English. I'm still at heart very British. My sons are half Scottish. I'm still passionate about these islands. But we want to just be stronger as a nation. We want to be stronger. So how do you give the freedom to people to be creative and move on, and particularly when the world is changing so rapidly? We don't. I think as a Northeast we do quite well, but we don't punch above our weight as a region. Why don't we?
Yeah, and I think it's a bit like if you use an analogy against companies. When you have a small business, you can be really agile, and you can pivot, you can change, you can swap things in and out very easily and very quickly. The bigger you get, it's a bigger beast to move, and you become very reactive rather than proactive. And I think there's some real benefit in looking at it from that point of view in terms of giving regions the ability to pivot, to change and be agile, because they're a manageable size to be able to do that.
And why can't we? Because there's downside to any upside. You can have all these ideas. And I think as a traditional Western economy, the reason we've got the challenges today is because the way that we utilize the cash that we generate within taxes and all that, and then maybe they're not getting spent in the best ways because they're getting spent in all these legacy ways. Do you know what I mean? We keep talking about, we talked about the NHS gets talked about a lot, but most organisations like that they're all massive legacy organisations that built up over time, and they need a bit of certainly evolution, if not revolutionary change, and that's probably, in my eyes, probably slimming them down a bit actually. So whether that's the NHS then being controlled from the Northeast and we do our bit, because they're smaller then and it's that easier to manage. The real benefit of my business is its history. The strongest thing I've got is the history of my business, but the biggest weakness is the history of my business, because I often think, we've tried to evolve this business model. It's really difficult. And, you get clients who get, hang on a second, you weren't doing that before, and trying to explain, but actually if you could start with a blank sheet of paper, it might have been easier, but then there's downside to that because then you'd lose your legacy, So I think it's a bit of all that. It's not easy to change, but actually how do we start to just keep taking those steps forward to going, this might work for us better? If you look at where some of the US states evolve somewhere like Austin in Texas, which has had this sudden growth in tech, is because they were able to change their corporation tax and they could lower it and such against wherever, and they suck businesses in. We sort of need to be able to do that too. And I'm not saying, again, that's not my area of expertise, but what do we do to get businesses to want to set up here? When we've got a decent infrastructure, we could improve all that. And how do we then, in what way are we bringing in more and exciting minds to this part of the world? You know, what a great place to work and live, you know. Look at what San Francisco did back as it had its tech revolution. How do we make that happen here? What did they do? And it will be things like control over tax and perhaps like that to a degree, you know, that ultimately makes the whole of Britain stronger and better. And there's got to be mechanisms in that because the thing is, we've got as a small island, we've got such a massive population. I mean, I was looking at it the other day. I mean, if you compare ourselves to Nevada as a state, it has the same population size and 5 times the GDP. And you go, well, all right, because they do gambling. Well, that's because they chose a sector they're really good at. So how can we do that? You know, maybe it's green energy here. Is it, you know, all these things we've talked about, but how do you actually really take the shackles off and free up innovation and free up thinking in an area which could be more collaborative because we're all closer together and we can get in a room with each other? You know, we don't have to jump on a train, really. You know, we can all, well, as long as A1's running, you know what I mean? Which it's not today, but.
Fear Less, Do More is brought to you by the team at Square One Law. If you're enjoying this episode, hit follow or subscribe. It really helps us out, and it means that you won't miss out on any future episodes. We have some great fearless guests that leave you feeling really inspired. And if you think someone else would enjoy it too, feel free to pass it on, whether that's a mate, a colleague, or someone in your network. Thanks for listening. Now back to the conversation.
I think there's that thing as well as there around public and private sector collaboration in the loosest sense of the word. You know, you're running a business that's been around for 117 years. It's longer than the NHS has been in operation. There's got to be things that can be learnt from business as to how you pivot, how you change, how you rationalise without destroying the good things about the
It's really
organisation.
difficult. Jill, it's really, really difficult. That's what I'm saying. The best thing about our business is its legacy, its history. The worst thing is its legacy, its history. You know, I'm passionate about family business, and there's a lot of legacy family businesses in the Northeast particularly. And the reason and sometimes people go, well, the family business, they're all a bit fuddy-duddy or whatever. They're not. They're usually the greatest innovators because that's why they're that age, because they've had to change. You know, they've had to move on and move through because economic cycles change. You know, like I say, we were heavily involved in the coal industry. That's probably why, you know, Tram's running coal and then in the coal mines, and then they've gone. So you've got to innovate and move on and change. You know, my dad's largest sector was white goods manufacturing, which people often forget we had here. So televisions and microwaves and cookers and all that was a big part of our business. We're not really doing that anymore. And they all went in the 2000s when China was invented, and all those companies like Philips and Samsung and Sanyo all disappeared. That's what happens. There's business cycle, and then you innovate and try and move on. And I have got so much wrong, and I wonder at times, am I communicating what I want to achieve in the best way? But sometimes it's just recognizing that's where I want to be, and we're going to do everything we can to get there. And you bring your team with you. Well, that's no different to the region as a whole. But making it smaller and allowing us, it's got to be easier to do, because then you can say it's smaller. We should be able to change it, and we be more focused on what we want to do as a region. And then that just takes strength of character and leadership, and going, shit, we're going to do this. Let's go. That's where we want to be.
Well, we've got two strong characters as mayors in the region, very different, but I think there's a general will between them to work together. So hopefully that, you know, there will be that determination to do the best for the region as a whole together and to develop it in that way. Let's just talk a little bit about you and the business. So you came into the business. How old were you when you started?
About 7.
Was it always just sort of accepted and expected that you would come into family business? Did you have a choice?
Do you know what? I said, Jill, I have said for years, no, it wasn't expected. And then I look at everything now looking back with hindsight and experience, I think my dad absolutely just managed me through it. No, it wasn't. And it, you know, but when you're born into a family business, my earliest memories when we were down at the bottom of Dean Street, and we were the first tenants in Milburn House, it's the big building at the bottom of Dean Street in Newcastle there. I remember running up and down the gangway into the...
So the one that was like a ship inside?
That's right, yeah. So we were the first ones on the bottom floor. It's a restaurant, I've forgotten the name of the restaurant, it's the restaurant now. And there was a gangplank sort of down into the where all the big sort of old Dickensian desks were. I remember running up and down there. I remember carrying boxes, tied up with, with a bit of sticky tape, brown paper, wrapping them up and carrying them up. My grandfather was in the business as well, and putting them in the back of his car. Arguably I never ever got any pocket money as soon as I was old enough. So when I said I started when I was age 7, that's not really a joke, because child labour the child labour laws probably weren't as strong then. They certainly weren't in our family. And so, I would work in the warehouse. As soon as I passed my driving test, I was driving a van because it was a good way of earning money. I went off to business. I went off to do a degree in business and marketing. Did my year out back in the business. Wrote my dissertation around marketing on a shoestring, SME style marketing. And I think it's impossible to say that I'm not emotionally bonded to it. And part of me thinks, no, my dad never put me under any pressure to join, but I do think, hang on a second, because I've got 2 boys, as you know, I've got 2 boys who are now, and I've never put any pressure on them, but it, and you can give them experience from it. And I loved the people who were working there, and so, no, arguably there was never any real pressure, but it's, my dad was a barrel maker and I'm the barrel maker's son. The chances are you're going to be a cooper as well, so. And
did either of your 2 fancy taking up the reins?
So both of mine now one's just started university, the other one is thinking about it. I think youngest will probably go travel the world, and I would encourage that. And the eldest, who's actually gone to the US to university, is studying supply chain, but only because when he got the prospectus from the university he chose, the largest salary on coming out, it says, was typically American prospectus tells you all the salaries you expect to leave. It was the highest, and he went, I'm doing this one, Dad. And I went, oh, that's what I do. And you're probably staying in America because I ain't going to pay you that. So, yeah, they know what we do, they do work in it, but I certainly wouldn't bring them in if they weren't the right people or they weren't good enough to do the work, or it wouldn't be handed to them. But I think it's a great opportunity. It's a great environment to work in. But at the same time, with youngest actually, who's probably less sure about, my eldest, Mackenzie, hasn't necessarily determined what he wants to do yet. He's exploring the world at the minute, and American University, really interesting in how they help him do that from a business perspective. Unbelievable, the connections he's built. But build your LinkedIn profile, make sure you connect. Network is really, categorically, as we know, network is categorically important. You need to have great people to talk to on an ongoing basis. And he's exploring it all that way. Youngest doesn't really know where he wants to sit, but he fancies traveling. I said, go travel, go explore the world, go meet people. So I think being curious.
The curiosity thing's really interesting. I think that's something that was instilled in me as a child, but I didn't really know it. It wasn't somebody saying to me, you need to be curious. And then when you go to university, different world opens up. When you travel, a different world opens up. And that curiosity enables you to learn as you go. You're involved with the university, visiting professor. Was that part of that sort of need to know more, be curious, find out more, and then help other people to do that as well?
Yeah, so I've done quite a bit of work with Northumbria University. They've got a great supply chain team, and so we were doing specific work, and then evolving out of that, I got a role on a board which is a part of Digital Catapult called Digital Supply Chain Hub, and I sit on the Strategic Advisory Board, which was a £25 million project, all about supporting organisations to start thinking about digitising their supply chain. And I sat on that. And alongside some of that, we did some work with the university around building out what we call a digital test bed, which is all about how do you take a copper welding tip and track it all the way back to the copper mine through every one of its iterations. So we've sort of started to build that, and at a point now where we've got a simulator built to start to be able to show that. And because of all that and that work I was doing, and then we're starting to bring other people to the university, we've created a Centre for Digital Supply Chain Excellence. And it's so that visiting professorship was around that. It's me I suppose it's me. I'm pretty good at understanding the real world position, and then you got the academic position, and how do you bring it together and translate between the two worlds a little bit?
It's that collaboration point again, isn't it?
It's
like you're always
really important.
Stronger with more diverse minds together, and stronger if you can work with people who you wouldn't normally work with.
And that's always quite interesting as well.
Perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, that's always, it's talking to people who just go, I can't understand that. I don't see that. I spend my most, I always say the stupid question's the one not asked, because it's never a stupid question, just stupid answers, actually.
And you can guarantee if you've got a stupid question, everybody else is thinking exactly the same thing in there.
And we should be asking more stupid questions. Like I'm saying, if we could not isolate is the wrong word, if we could put the Northeast as a separate entity within Britain, is that a stupid question? What if we just explored it? Just go ask the question and why. And if you get the point where you say, but for these reasons you can't do that, it would be catastrophic when you don't do it. Yeah. But actually, if there's a chance that this might be better because you've asked that one question, then that's where, and then the powers that be and the leaders should be able to answer to that, really. And at least ask the question, because that's where change comes from, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's
That's where you get the magic, is when you get two completely things that shouldn't really go together, but then they do.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. So yes, but part of that visiting professorship at Northumbria was around that. That's why I am it. And look at the way higher education's working. They've got all their challenges as well. We've got to think differently. There's all sorts of things they could do to improve. It's just getting to it and having the time and the inclination, and then somebody just going, why?
Yeah. Do you get frustrated about that one, because you're used to working? The chief executive in business, and I know you've got a team around you, but you make the decisions and you go, this is what we're doing, just get on, come on, we're going to do this. When you move into a big organisation like a university, it could be an NHS trust, it could be a public sector, a local authority. Is that a comfortable environment for you to be in?
You're asking me this on camera again. I think, it's difficult. As you know me fairly well, I can be a bit impatient. Never. Come on, let's get thanks. Let's get stuff done. Let's move on. But actually, that's also not necessarily the best all the time. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you need to step back and just reflect on stuff. I'm not great at that. But that's then there is, and then that becomes culture clash between SME, big corporate, public sector, because it is easier to do it within an SME. There's no two ways about that. But that doesn't. And so part of me says, that's why big corporations want to be working with SMEs to create, and what they should see is the energy and the excitement and the ability for them to go, well, we need to capture that, but we have to do it within our own framework. It's like you say, if we said, right, again, the Northeast is a great example, let's just shut it off tomorrow, we're going to be us and ourselves. You can't do it overnight, but what you don't want to do is do it within the next 50 years. Yeah. How do you do it within the next 5 years, 3 years, whatever it might be, in some sort of time scale? That's not that fast. As I might want to be, but it's sort of balanced. So it is, and I do, and I can get very frustrated with it. And part of me is, if we're truly collaborative, the other side should understand that frustration and be excited by it, to go, well, we need to be that. We need to have that energy in the room. Toby brings some energy to this room. And I have to be able to step and go, but I understand why we can't change it all today. Whereas if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I'd just be in tears and annoying, stamping my feet. And that's not, it's collaborate. It's how people work together. It's all about humans working together effectively. How do you collaborate? And how do we get the best out of the situation? And me not going, well, you're hopeless because you're too slow, and them going, well, you're just crazy because you're just trying to run too quickly. Do you know what I mean? How do you just find balance? And that we all understand where we are, and then appreciate and get excited by it.
Do you think that's an entrepreneurial trait, that impatience?
Yeah.
That need to get things on? Oh, you sit on the board of Entrepreneurs Forum.
Yeah.
So you're sitting with a group of people there, and I mean, I'm part of the network as well, and I love it because I always say, I do Entrepreneurs Forum for me, because I get a lot out of it talking to other people who are running businesses. And it's something that I see when we do these podcasts, is that the majority of people, if you say to them, how do you get over your fear of doing things? You say, well, what's the worst that could happen? Just do it. Yeah. I've always been a yes person. Yeah. It's the same sort of themes. It's that sort of impatience to get stuff done and to realise potential that sort of gets rid of any fear. Yeah. Is that your experience?
I think most, if not all, of the Entrepreneurs Forum members, all of them great people, are all driven and hungry and wanting to do it. The ability, though, I was talking about this morning with somebody, really, it's that in any great business for me, there's usually two people. There's that person with the fervour and you know, the Steve Jobs out there doing it, seeing stuff, you know, but then that person in behind who's creating that operational and just going, well, this is how we can do it, but we're going to have some time to do it. That's that balance. So I think, yeah, in terms of the leaders that are part of the entrepreneurs, from the entrepreneurs, yeah, I think most of them are like that. I mean, it's just frantic, and then why haven't you done it? And we're all doing it and moving it. But actually, you know, great businesses aren't built just on that. That's the starting point. Here's the idea. This is what I want to do. I've got some passion about it. But actually, how do you create?
You need the delivery behind
great
it.
operation and behind it, absolutely. And like I say, most business, you know, in a very simplistic way of looking at it, for me, most businesses are usually two people. You know, Steve Ballmer, Bill Gates was a great example of that.
And when you just mentioned two people there, but who are your sort of heroes in business? Who are the people that you look at and think, that's the way to do it?
Well, obviously you.
Oh, obviously, yeah. Clearly, that was you know, discounted me from that.
That's the only reason you allowed me to come and say that. But it's not. I mean, I'm not sure I've got. Heroes is the wrong word, but you do look at people who are doing great things, and I mean, if you look what you did with your business and what you've done and how you've changed it, the whole point of being fearless, the fact that you look like the least legal person I've ever seen in my entire life, is brilliant. It's brave, and it's out there, and it's different, and you're wanting to make a change in the world. And I think it's so anybody who's like that, you know, I aspire to. But there's some great people working in corporate. I was just, you know, in the NHS this morning, working with the guy, and you can see the change that they want to make. And when you work when the time I spent in the NHS, what we feel in it for me is the weight of the organisation. So big, it feels so big, and there's so many people and all that. And actually, but there's some really good people wanting to change the world in quite a complex way of doing it. It's not. I could change it tomorrow, but it can't, because it's got to change. Yeah. It's got to, you know, and so there's. You know, it's just, some of the, you know, a couple of people I met today, just, and I've spent time with and worked with are good. You know, there's, you know, some of the professors inside the university are good working in, you know, but you can see them wanting to change. It's, to me, the people who inspire me the most, who go, we don't feel this is quite right, and we're going to look at wanting to do it differently and move on and be different. And all right, Toby, you might have these great ideas, but actually, how do we adjust them to work at our pace and get that right? And they're the people you want to work with, really. So you know, other than saying, you always, people are going to say, well, Steve Jobs inspires me because of what he did and all that. So there's lots of people like that. But actually, some of the people, it's just, I mean, you talk about the Entrepreneurs Forum, there's a myriad of them in there. Absolutely. Who just blow me away in what they do, you know, and I'm a better person. I mean, I've been a member of the forum now almost since its starting point, and I never really got involved in it until I took over from Dad, and then you feel like you're on your own. And I remember going out, and Alice Rowan, my first dinner was her first dinner, and she sat next to me, and she was a year into Pink Boutique, and she blew me away with that understanding of what a client is, you know, and amazing. Do you know what I mean? And that's so totally inspiring. You know, she's obviously gone on and created a great business, and then there's a whole host of others. I mean, you know, and so the people who inspire me today, and they're here in the Northeast. Yeah. You know, I say there's sorts of people around the world who are doing some great stuff, but actually there's people here in the Northeast, from an entrepreneurial point of view, from a leadership point of view, are doing some really good stuff. You know, and Absolutely. I think they're the ones who inspire me. So so you're on that list, Jill. But it's a list. It is. You know?
Yeah. Well, it's absolutely. People ask me this all the time about, you know, who have you met that you thought was really inspirational. But actually, doing this podcast, every single business person I've talked to, it's been different in some way, and there's something about them that's really inspiring. And most of them are people in this region. Yeah. And a lot of them are people that other people outside the region wouldn't have a clue about. Yeah. Which is part of the reason for doing the podcast. I think. You've got a business that's been going for a long time. You've been involved in it for quite a long time. You talked a little bit about where you would see it going in the future, predominantly around further automation and development of AI. But if you were able to give yourself, not quite 7-year-old, but maybe, you know, when you came into the business full time, a bit of advice, what would you have said to your younger self?
do you know it's a hard one, because sometimes you got to get the battle scars and so forth. If I give you all the answers up front, you're not going to listen anyway. I wouldn't have listened. I'd have told my older self to get stuffed. I'm doing my own thing anyway, because I knew it all. But actually for me, and it's probably, you asked me the question about my boys, Mackenzie and Corey, coming into the business. The stuff I'm doing now with them, or what I would, is like, how do you know, it's go make your own decisions, you know, go think about it, go be curious, network. It's one of the single most important things you can do. So yeah, in my world, Entrepreneurs Forum is great. So anyone who's running a business of a size, it's a great place to create peer group. But even if it's not there, create it somewhere. I should have got there faster and quicker. I always felt a bit guilty, because I always saw my dad was a mentor to me, because at the end of the day, he ran a really good business. Arguably better than mine, but he did run a really good business. And I always saw him, and I felt guilty about going and asking somebody else to be a mentor. But actually, the point is, you should have quite a few. Yeah, and a mentor, and I hate the term mentor or mentee. It's not that. It's about the ability to have a cup of coffee with somebody, have a chat, chuck some ideas around, and come away feeling refreshed, and recognizing that even in your worst day, somebody else has probably had a worse day, or at least have had the same.
There's always somebody who's in a worse position.
Yeah. So just keep being curious, and yeah, network. I think are probably the things I would say to myself back then. And don't wait for the world to come to you. Go get the world. You know, go. If you're going to put a dent in the universe, go get the hammer out. You know, and do you know what? It's going to go wrong. And you know, some of the stuff I do, and even at the moment, you go, I've still not got this right. Been doing this, and I've still not got this right. What have I not got right? But what I'm thinking better at now is just going. Just release the emotion of all that. Just look at it, and then go fix it. You know, and I try and do that with my teams now. You know, I try and act as a mentor of my team, not a boss. You know, they're great people. We all need improvement every day, and I'm saying the same to them. We need to find your network, people to talk to, people who are, you know, in similar position. So network, be curious, just be more curious. And although I think I probably always have been. And then just. To me, it's about how do we enable, where I feel I want to be now is how do we enable, I think particularly the Northeast, just to be an even more vibrant area than perhaps it is now. How do we get to that? And, you know, and then look at I mean, for me, part of all of this is how do we, you know, look at education and how young people are educated and everything. It worries me greatly that arts-based subjects in schools and in the universities now are starting to tail away and have done. And that worries me greatly, that we're not creating the artists and the creators of the future when AI potentially is going to do it. It's like we can all be really, really good on STEM subjects, but if you can't communicate it or create the stories to that, it has to go balanced. And so, you know, part of me would probably say to my younger self, this is going to come and you need to be involved in it. You need to, you know, even in your small way, be talking to people, questioning people, and because we've always, as a family business, I think, I've always seen we have a responsibility to our region, and that should come by just creating a great region. I can't really create a great UK. I can help, but I can certainly help more to create a great region because you're smaller.
Yeah. And
we can do stuff together, you know, in a region which has still got 3 or 4 million people living in it. Yeah. It's not a small region.
Not at all, no.
Does that make, so I'm not sure you've answered your question.
No, really, you have, that's fine. And just to finish off, the podcast obviously called VLS Do More. What would you like to be doing more of in the future?
I think probably the future should be fear less, do less, isn't it?
Good answer.
Well, I think it's a lot. I mean, just everything that we've talked about, really, isn't it? I mean, fear at the moment. I mean, look at where we are with all this market turmoil and everything, and fear is coming for all sorts of reasons. I think if we could release that fear and just go, look, we are where we are. These are the opportunities we've got regionally. You know, we categorically know that we're spending. The government's having to raise so much tax because it's got so much legacy cash to pay out to all these organisations, which could, in theory, utilising digital technologies, by adopting these technologies, you know, we need to work more on that and getting that put in place so that actually we can do less which allows us to do more creative thinking. And I think, to me, I think we're at a point in the history of the UK really where we just need to be braver, release the fear, go, okay, what's the worst that could happen? Well, this is what could happen. But actually, if there's some sense in doing this, then we should at least explore it. Yeah, so I think, for me, it's not necessarily about doing more, it's about doing things differently, better, and like I said, the whole purpose of our business now, and probably always has been, is that whole eradication of obsolescence and waste in supply chains, which we're spending so much money on, and cash can tied up and all those sort of things. If we could eradicate all of that, I think the world would be a better place, and certainly and we would free up a lot more. I mean, certainly with some of these big legacy organizations, more cash to do better stuff really, and pay it and give it to people who should be paid, more nurses and all that sort of thing. It's just, it feels fairly obvious, not easy to do, but that should be our direction of travel. So for me, and whilst it's challenging getting to a new world, it really is, and it's I sometimes disappoint myself in that, maybe don't communicate as effectively as we should do, as we try to move people to new ways of thinking and how we work. But ultimately, we've just got to keep taking steps on. How do we get people to collaborate more together? Sit in a room and go, right, forget all the profit. How do we actually generate more value? How do we, we've got some great big corporate engines in this region, and indeed public sector, some great public sector. And how do we actually just get in a room and go, well, why are you doing it like that? How do you bring entrepreneurial community to those organizations and create that? That would be a brilliant thing to do, wouldn't it?
It would be. And I think we've got the opportunity, we've got devolution, that's just the start.
Yeah.
And there is an opportunity there, because the two mayors are going to have to collaborate, and they're going to have to listen to their constituents and collaborate with them. So there is a real opportunity, and I'm sure that you will play a part in that somewhere, making your dent in the universe. So
I'm just the shouty noise in the background. That's how I feel. You know what I mean? And people go, just go listen to them.
No, you need people who will shout, and then other people who will sit and process that and work out a sensible way of doing things.
We need change, don't we? The world has to change. We can't keep doing what we're doing, otherwise.
Oh, that's it. Definition of madness, isn't it?
It is.
Just keep doing what you're doing,
But
get what you got.
It's just iteration. We need to move on, and we've got to be brave. We've got to be fearless.
And what a way to end. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story and sharing the fact about some of the issues that we have in the region and how we might solve them. Thanks, Toby.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Fear Less, Do More, brought to you by Square One Law. If you found today's conversation inspiring or interesting, we've added a recommendation for what to listen to next. That's either on the screen now or in the show notes. Take care, and we'll see you next time.